Hi guys, ciao guys, welcome to another episode of the Personal PR Show. And today we're here with Derek. Again, Derek, this is your second or third time on the show, right? We love you. We want to be...
Wow, yeah. Second time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so cool. Wow. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is super cool. We'll tell you in a second, guys. But how are you, Derek? First of all, how are things going in the States? What are you wearing today? What is this that you're wearing really stands out?
Yeah, you're noticing my piece of nephrite jade or greenstone from New Zealand. Yeah, getting into the swing of the holiday season. You know, things around here, we're having potluck party on Friday. And, you know, speaking of being connectors, it's always great hosting events, right? I know you're having an online party, but anytime you're able to bring a bunch of people together, it's, you know, super connector 101, really.
Absolutely. Yes. Are you going to do anything locally, like offline?
Yes.
You know, in addition to, of course, doing all of your online stuff, which is amazing.
Well, yeah. So a lot of times when we host a party, it's like a bring your coolest friend party. And so if we invite 10 friends and they bring their coolest friend, then all of a sudden everyone has this great sampling of interesting new people to meet.
I love that. Absolutely. Yes. This is how you can improve. Like usually when people ask me, how can I, you know, start my network from scratch, I always say, do just, I don't know, like a weekly or bi-monthly function, just a gathering, and then ask everybody to bring a +1. Within 3-4 weeks, oh my God, you're going to attract, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 people to every single one of your meetings, right? Absolutely. This is really the power of the +1 or the coolest friend, as you say. I love that. Absolutely. Yes. But today, Derek, we're here not to talk about friends, but to talk about VIPs. And what is the angle of our interview? Do you remember?
Well, you and Bonnie and I were chatting about, we were just sort of talking about how we get emails from people and we ignore them. And so personally, I've done a study of what makes people actually reply to emails, because unfortunately, if you're not doing it the right way, people will just ignore you. And this is the problem that people find in the internet. They maybe apply to 400 jobs and no one gets back to them, or they try to get someone important that they really want on their podcast or to mentor them or whatever it may be, and they just get ignored. And so if you're going to spend the time to write an email or make a request from someone, especially someone you don't know, or even if you know them, if they're a VIP, and what I mean by a VIP is it can be anybody, even if they're less far along in their career from you. But anytime you want something from someone, anytime there's like a gap between they have something to give you and you're the one wanting someone, there's like it creates a hierarchy. And so this applies not just to billionaires or Olympians or CEOs or whatever, but also to people, everyday people who are also busy, who you're hoping to like have a beneficial interaction with.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a very successful podcaster, you're one of these VIPs, right? Because you get so many emails from people that want to work with you and they want to be featured on your podcast, right? Yeah. By the way, guys, let me just mention to you very briefly that Derek has had this podcast going on for years, like 7 years. How many episodes you have? 300, 400? I don't know how many.
We're at like 9 years. Yeah.
God.
Getting up there. Almost 400 episodes. Yep. Derek Loudermilk show.
No, sure. It's really an iconic show. And should we just drop a few names of the people that you have interviewed? I remember, for example, Adam Grant, right? The Adam Grant was on your show. Actually, even at the beginning, the very beginning, the first few years of your show, he was already there. I mean, you definitely know how to make VIPs be interested in your in what you're doing. My God.
I had some really big people at first, which was super cool. Thanks to Adam Grant. Actually, he did me a solid and introduced me to 5 sort of world-changing people. Aaron Hurst was sort of the first of that set, but Erica Dewan and anyway, there's a whole group of these like either famous CEOs or people with millions of followers that I got like very early on, and that lent me credibility anytime I wanted to have someone similar, and that led to me getting the scoop with Derek Sivers. I was the first podcast that he did. Really, he's good friends with people like Tim Ferriss and Ramit Sethi and all these guys, and they were wanting to get him on their show, but I happened to have had this correspondence with Derek. We also share the same name, so that actually helps. I have like a little group of people with the same name as me that that happen to be famous that I hang around with. But so I had this sort of like correspondence going for years with Derek Sivers, and I was like, yo, when you're ready, let me be your first podcast interview. And so Derek Sivers is kind of this rogue entrepreneur. He ended up, he founded CD Baby and helped over 1 million musical artists get their first album published, and he sold his company, but he didn't keep any of the money. So he sold it for 250 million, but he basically donated it all to charity. And he pays himself like a small salary, like 4% of the funds from this charity each year. But so people really love what he's up to, but basically, and that gave him creative freedom to do whatever projects he wanted to from then on. And so people look to him as like, here's what you do when you don't need money and you just want to express yourself creatively. So that was super cool. I got to have him on my show. And then like a few weeks later, he was on Tim's show, and I was like, yes, got the scoop here.
Even before Tim Ferriss. Oh my God, this is amazing. And yes, so would you like to share with us maybe how you managed to approach these let's call them VIPs now, these very important people and very busy people, right? They get so many requests, and they have to decline a lot of them, but they say yes to you, right? So what do you think was, let's say, the secret of your way to approach them? Of course, with some of them, you're already in touch. For example, with Derek, you're already in touch because you had been corresponding for a few years. So that is a different story. But should we maybe not know that person that we want to interview, not know them personally yet? What can we do in order to entice them?
Well, so even starting a correspondence with someone, that takes time and thoughtfulness on their part. And I believe I started that by just giving him sort of honest feedback about his work. So I was, reading what he had been writing in his blog posts, and I do this a lot of times. I'll say, here's a few things that I learned from your writing, and I've implemented this in my life, and I just want to thank you for doing this work. And it's a very they don't have to reply, right? They can let the compliment arrive in their inbox and read it and feel great about it without needing anything. And then sort of if you were to follow up, then they're sort of predisposed to know that you understand their work pretty well, and so you're not going to waste their time with something. So sometimes I'll start a correspondence just because I want to have a relationship with that person, and sincere, well-researched flattery is a great place to start.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, we need to do research. Like I always talk about this in networking or in publicity when we are trying to get featured on third-party channels. Before we pitch anything, we always have to do research, right? And it's the same thing now with the topic that we're discussing now. Like it takes time, even as a podcaster, it takes time to really get prepared in order to make sure that we really understand the person that is coming on the show, and to make sure that we prepare good questions, right?
Yeah, so example, I'm remembering a story that what's the guy that made ClickFunnels?
Richard
Russell Brunson.
Russell
Russell Brunson. He knew that he wanted to have a relationship with Tony Robbins because he wanted to serve Tony's audience, which has a lot of online entrepreneurs. And eventually he wanted Tony to be like recommending Russell to his audience frequently, at his events and things like that. So he worked backwards from there. He was like, okay, what do I need to do to have a solid relationship with Tony Robbins? So it was like, took him 2 full years of thinking of different ways to add value to Tony's audience and delivering. And he put a lot of work in on the front end, sort of, researching and planning and then delivering value. And then eventually Tony was like, I see that you're getting results for my people and I can recommend you. But that recommendation is probably worth $100 million, right? So it ended up being a great relationship. I think they still collaborate like after many years, but anybody can sort of think who if they were to recommend me would make a huge difference in my career. I don't know if it's Tony Robbins or if it's an entrepreneur or a politician or a social media influencer, whoever it may be. If you had a small handful of these people and if they were all recommending you, that would make your whole career, right? Then you can be very strategic about, let's become friends with all of these people and then get to work thinking, how can I serve them? What do I have in my skill set, or what's available? Like, who am I connected with, or what can I sort of bring into their world that's going to benefit them or their audience or their fans or whatever. So that's just a kind of a simple way of starting to think about this process. And I feel like maybe I got off track there. I can't remember what your original question was.
Not to worry. I mean, it's just, we're just in flow anyway. But by the way, guys, what Derek is drinking is actually yerba mate from Argentina, right? Because it's the morning for you. You can still have caffeine. We're not allowed because
still waking up. And this is, I do a lot of travel, and my girlfriend brought me a gourd like 20 years ago, and it finally cracked. And I got this. It's carob wood, which is like the chocolate replacement. If you've ever heard of carob, it's what they use. But so this wood kind of adds like a sweet chocolatey flavor to the mate. So I love, these sort of cultural traditions from. I'm a big cultural appropriator. It's politically incorrect, but I'm all about it.
I know, especially when it comes to gems and stones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm wearing, this is like sacred in the Maori tradition, here I am.
And how many stones do you have? You have like a whole collection of stones and gems.
Well, I consider myself to be a crystal scientist, researcher in a sense. So I'm working with studying crystals. They're a life form in their own sense. There's many similarities with biological life, but the way that they store information and relate to consciousness is pretty fascinating. And they're in a lot of technology, watches and TVs and lasers and all kinds of things. But yeah.
That's a topic for another conversation, maybe next year. Again, you come here every 2 months anyway. Then once we can talk about stones and maybe the power of crystals for networking or for whatever topic, ideas, and I don't know, and thought leadership.
I do use them for business. So there's like there's a bunch of things you can use for business. So that's potentially a topic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes. Okay, cool. So you have to come to the show once a month because we have so many topics. We already have it's already the whole program of 2023. Okay, cool. But yes, so you just said that we have to be strategic in the relationship that we build, because then maybe it will take us 1 year or 2 years to build a relationship, and then and then we know what we want to get out of the relationship. And by the way, we're not saying that you should only build relationships in order to get something. We are not transactional here, because because Derek knows better than me that networking is actually giving, first of all, right? So we know this, right? At the same time, though, we do want to be strategic as well. So you were given the example of Russell Brunson and Tony Robbins. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that is a little bit personal. So, Derek, who do you want to be associated with? Who do you want to publicly endorse you in 2 years or 3 years that you want to start building a relationship or a conversation with now? If you don't mind.
Well, I'll give you an example of a couple that are in process. So I teach business to healers, coaches, spiritual teachers. And so thinking strategically about people who have audiences of that type of people. So YouTubers, especially, that a lot of spiritual teachers and healers follow, people like Elizabeth April and Aaron Abke. This year I've become friends with, and it's exciting for me to see them as peers, to have them as peers at this point. And we're in the middle of conversations about what exactly their audience would want from me. I have, several different things that I offer, from my mastermind to the books, like Activate Your Life, that I organize. And so the conversation is, what type of collaboration, what type of offer would you really want to do? And these people, they realize that people are, even more than before, leaving the corporate world, starting their own healing business. And so a lot of people still need to learn how to do business for the first time. And when I say business, I just mean like they have a mission that they want to fund and keep doing their mission, essentially a sustainable, profitable mission.
Yes.
And so they don't want to have to teach business because they're busy teaching, about Christ consciousness or ETs or spiritual healing or whatever it is. And so it's a perfect, right, if they can be like, oh my gosh, yes, everyone needs business, and I have this vetted person that can do that. So they've experienced, working with me to some degree. So then they can send their audience over my way, and then we'll, if there's profitability, we'll split it, and it all works out. So that started by even before I had them on my podcast, I was engaging with them on social media. I would, so they probably, I'm guessing they didn't confirm this one way or the other, but I'm guessing they had seen some comment or feedback that I had posted either on their YouTube or their Instagram. And then when my team pitched to invite them onto my show, maybe in the back of their head, they had some familiarity, right? Some awareness of who I was. Or I think Aaron had heard, he was at a party and someone, a client of mine, was talking about working with me. And then he had another friend that was on my show. So like people had mentioned my name around him. So he had that level of familiarity. And then as far as the offer to come on my show, I did name drop. I was like, here's 3 similar people like you that have come on the show, and we had, a good response to them. So there's some social proof there that makes them feel like, okay, I'm not going to be wasting my time with this. And I had a very specific request. He talks about a number of topics. I had a very specific request. I want to talk about the map of consciousness and the densities of consciousness, which is like a small part of his expertise, but very, clear. We have like today, we have a clear topic about conversation. So he knew that what we were going to deliver through an interview was already thought out. And so that makes it easy for someone to feel like you're prepared enough that it's going to be worth their time. Yes. So there's a few things I mentioned there that sort of allowed him to respond to that initial email. Now, the way that we structure the email itself is important. We make it as simple as possible and easy for them to continue the conversation. So really all we're looking for when we send out a first cold email is for the conversation to continue. So ideally, if they can reply with a single word, like, yes, I'm interested, then you can keep going. So I would say something like, hey, Aaron, I've been following your work. I'm a fan of like XYZ. I host a podcast. I'd love to have you on to talk about XYZ. We've had these other guests, that are similar, and here's the result that we got from having them on. Are you interested? ? And so that "are you interested" is such a great ender, because then they can be like, yes, I am interested. And they're not committing to anything. There's no commitment yet. They're just expressing, okay, I'm interested enough to continue the conversation. So then I'll follow up with, okay, here's how we record the shows. Here's what you can expect. Here's where you can find a time, my calendar link. And then those are kind of like just the details of it, right? But we don't want to send the details at first. We don't want to try to tie them down to anything without knowing they're committed. We just want to start the conversation going.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, I love this. I love this. This is perfect. And then usually their team, because if they're busy people, then probably they have a team, they can just, take over, right? But what we need at the beginning is for them to say yes, that they are interested. And then all of the logistics can be sorted out later in a second step. I love this. This is genius. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Derek, is would you think of coming pre-qualified by having somebody like a mutual contact, if there is any mutual contact, introduce you? Because a lot of times, like what I've noticed, for example, in my networking efforts, or is basically that if I come pre-qualified, then the person that I want to connect with will already have, let's say, there already will be a certain element of trust, because they will think, okay, Jessica is friends with my friends, then in a way she's trustable, right? She's trustworthy, excuse me. So have you ever noticed anything? Have you ever proceeded in this way, but when approaching any VIP that you want to
usually that's 100% success rate, right? Because people, it's kind of like they're spending some social capital by requesting that person take the time to even 5 minutes to read the introduction, right? That's a request that you're asking of someone. And so they're doing a calculation in their mind. Is it worth me spending a little social capital to make this request or introduction? And sometimes you get turned down, right? So I asked my friend, I said, hey, I'd like to meet Aubrey Marcus. It's time for me to interview him on the show. And he was like, I can't do that anymore. Like, he has too many people that want to meet him, so I'm not introducing. And that's fine. But he said, here's what I would do. I would cold pitch him and just mention that we are friends. So it's kind of like he's willing for me to name drop when I do a cold email, but he's not able to do an introduction. But most of the time, an introduction would be the fastest way in. Obviously LinkedIn can show you like, here's who you know, or Facebook can show you like, here's your friends in common. But if he or she is outside of your sort of sphere of connections, you may just have to do the cold outreach. And if you're going to do that, you can use all possible platforms, right? All the social medias where they're active, do the same type of request, or like I'll comment on Instagram and on LinkedIn, like, FYI, I just sent you an email about being on my show, so that like wherever they check first, they're gonna know, okay, this person's trying to get a hold of me. The other thing is, sometimes when people are pitching someone to come on my show, they will follow up 3 or 4 times. A lot of times it's not a great fit and I'm just ignoring it, but sometimes I'll keep coming back and I'm sitting with like, is this a good guest for my show? And eventually I'll say, yeah, let's bring them on. And it was only because their team was following up regularly, like once every 5 days for several weeks, did it actually happen. And so it's great, right, to have someone following up for you. Like it takes any self-consciousness out of it. If you can just assign this, like, please follow up with this person 5 times until they like directly refuse, or you feel like you've really burnt it out. But if you have to do that for yourself, there's a little bit of discomfort, I think, that can come with asking over and over again. But it's really, if you really want that, you'll keep trying different angles until, you know, they shoo you away, really.
Oh my God. Has it happened to you that somebody followed up on you and your team for, let's say, 5 times, and then you at the end you still said no because you really couldn't picture them being on your podcast?
Sure. Yeah. If they don't get the hint, if I'm just not replying, you know, I'll just say, you know, no, thank you. But there's someone right now that I've been trying for years to have, and I've had 3 or 4 personal introductions, and I've had where even she's responded. I don't think, maybe I shouldn't say who it is, but it's gotten to the point where we've like had these failed conversations that have fizzled out. And so this is something that's like, because basically I've taken her work and I've adapted it. I've taken the concept and added to it, and I've had success with it. So I think it's really important for her to know what I'm doing with her research. And I think she would really love it. And also she's a fantastic, you know, teacher and researcher. So I think it would really benefit her, or she would find it interesting to understand like what I've discovered with her research. But it just hasn't quite worked out, right? But this is something I'm not gonna let go.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
trying. And
yeah. So what you've done thus far with her is that you got introduced to her from 3-4 different people, which is already great social proof, by the way. And then you had conversation, like, let's say not very long conversations, but you still got in, you know, talked with one another. Did you actually tell her that you added, that you loved her concept so much that you kind of adopted it and actually added to it, and that was very successful? Did you get to that point? Does she know?
Yeah, and I I believe I structured it like, hey, I love your work. It's been really impactful. I actually took the concept and I added something to it. And I think I left it a little bit of mystery. Like, I have a really interesting result that I'd love to share with you. Are you open to coming on the show? And then at that time, I'll tell you a little bit about this experience. So, right, there's a little bit of intrigue there that could lead to someone wanting to find out more. But I think, you know, some people are just like, come back to me in 6 months. I'm busy right now. And then 6 months comes and you're like, hey, how's this time? They're like, still busy. Come back to me in 3 more months. So it can be a long process with some folks.
Absolutely. That's why we need perseverance, and certainly we also need a team, not just perseverance, right? We need a team to do the follow-up in a lot of cases. Like, for example, Chair, my relationship manager, oh mama, she has to follow up on a lot of people. I couldn't do this myself all the time. I have other things to do, so it helps to have a team, definitely. Yes. And Derek, who is the person that, okay, where you thought, okay, I do have my techniques, they have worked many times, I'm going to use them as well with this particular person, but I don't know, like, they're so busy, they're so important, they have this celebrity status and so on, that I don't know if my techniques will work, but then they did work. And then you had them on your show, this person on your show. Can you think of anybody where you were surprised that the techniques actually worked?
That's a great question. I think Foster Gamble was one of those people. He, he created the Thrive documentary movies, which are the most viewed documentaries in history, over 100 million views that they can track. And he's involved with a lot of inventors around the world, but also he's organizing. He's kind of like trying to set up an alternative to the United Nations, which is essentially how to match people with solutions that are going to solve our problems. So he's created this hub where different communities of people, people cleaning water or alternative governance or whatever it might be, can find that. So he's really busy. But it was like he's very available, surprisingly.
Was it a great interview? I imagine so. Like your interviews are quite long as well, right? Like Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, quite long. And I got a real gem of part of the conversation, something I've never heard him talk about before. And this is, so when I'm preparing for an interview, I'll, listen to a few previous ones, and they'll drop these little like nuggets that other guests don't follow up on because they're trying to hit some, like they're thinking like a producer, what do I want to make sure I hit in this? And they don't have time to sort of follow this thread. And I discovered this ancient lineage of basically the 5 royal families of different countries in Asia have this alliance called the Dragon Family Alliance, and it's multiple thousands of years old, and they've been behind the scenes shaping the trajectory of Asia. And these are kind of like the spiritual kings of Asia, and they're the richest people in the world, and you've never heard of them, but they reached out to Foster once Foster started producing his documentaries, and they said, we see your work and we think it's important what you're doing, and we're going to support you. And they flew him over for a private meeting in their like secret forbidden city compound, and he was able to sort of reveal a little bit about what it is they do. So think of the richer than the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, but in Asia and thousands of years old. And it actually made me very positive about the future of humanity, that there's this source of good that's looking out for people and sort of operating behind the scenes on many levels. So it was just a huge bombshell of a piece of information, right, to get on an interview.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a bombshell already if they only reveal it to you. But in this case, he talked about it like on your show, and we know that your show is very popular. So he discloses information with so many people. But you're right. Sometimes these very stories are the ones that don't get as much attention as other things, like, for example, talking points that you get ready, that you prepare before the interview, or like sound bites, which is something that we, as publicists, we teach, of course. But yeah, these little stories should definitely get more attention as well. Oh my God. Yes. And in terms of like, Foster was already like a very VIP, very important VIP. And who else did you have in your show where you thought, oh my God, I'm never going to have this person, but still it worked? Adam Grant, was it?
Who was a long-term?
Yeah.
So, I mean, some people are just surprisingly easy. Like, it's just like, oh, that went way easier than I expected. I think, if you're asking enough people, you're going to have a spectrum. Whereas like, wow, this really famous person, I must have just caught him on the right day. And they're like, yeah, easy. And then the more challenging ones are where you spend strategically, a lot of time and creativity thinking, how am I going to meet this person? Who else? I'm kind of drawing a blank. But I have another story, just another example. So I use podcasting as a way of sort of slotting people in, but our mutual friend Bonnie has another example that she was telling me about when she was helping basically create the internet. She had this board that everybody wanted to be on the board of this nonprofit. And so they were all like, from Bill Gates to Steve Jobs to, all the who's who in tech, Silicon Valley, they were all sort of like asking to be on this board of this nonprofit. And so that's another option of like having a place for somebody to land, whether it's a podcast or a board of a nonprofit, or another guy, Christopher Kai, he wrote this book about networking with celebrities. You know him?
Oh my God, I stayed at his place in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive for a week a few years ago. We're very good friends.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, so he had a charity, right? He would always invite people. You were a speaker there?
Yeah, so it was, sorry, in LA, there's a shelter, right? So it would go there every week or so. And then I went there as the speaker of the week, right, to talk about public relations and so on. And the previous week, just 1 week before that, on that particular chair where I was sitting, Elon Musk was sitting in that chair, right? And that was all organized by Christopher Kai. Yes, absolutely. Sorry for the interruption, but he's such a good dear friend. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So he, I thought that's brilliant, right? He has this, like if he's at a party and he meets Elon Musk, he has this very easy, like, hey, Elon, I have this shelter and I bring speakers in, do you want to do that? And so it's having whether it's a board or a podcast or a charity or whatever, like an easy way to invite your VIP into your world, in a way that allows them to sort of be of service. That's helping people be of service is a fantastic way to sort of start a relationship.
Yes, absolutely. No, I love all of this. And if you have the podcast and the charity, maybe something else, then you can really quantum leap, as they say, quantum leap your network, right? And your impact as well. Oh my God, I love this. So you have the podcast. Have you ever considered having a charity, Derek?
No, I haven't, but I had a friend, he just started a foundation like a week ago. I helped him start this foundation, and he hosts these events. They're like panel discussions. So around a topic like, again, clean water or governance or environmental protection or whatever it might be, and he'll bring in experts. And so people want to come and participate on his panels, and he hosts the panels. And so he gets recognition as the host, as the organizer of this event. And then, his foundation can get funding or advice, and he's putting together a board right now. So there's a lot of different angles in which you can have someone start to participate in what you're doing.
Absolutely love this. And Derek, one of the questions that I have for you is what happens after the interview? Because we've talked about the before the interview and the during the interview as well. But what happens afterwards? Because now you've made this amazing connection. It took you maybe even years to get to the point of, having them say yes to coming on your show. But what happens afterwards? Because as I know you as a super connector, global super connector, and I'm certain that you don't just let the relationship go away after the interview, right? You nurture the relationship.
Yeah. So usually I will set aside 5 minutes sort of after the interview, and I'll have a list of ideas. So 10 ways that I could help this person, because I've already researched them enough to know. And so at the end, I'll be like, hey, I have these ideas for you, or people to interview you, people to introduce you to, or have you thought about XYZ in your research, or there's an article I want to send you, or whatever it might be. And I will sort of just ask them, like, do you want these things, or are you interested? Right. So at least they can understand that I'm willing to help them. And then sometimes I'll just continue the conversation. Like whenever I think of them, I'll just send them a note. Right. I was watching this video on YouTube today, and the guy sort of referenced this, and you had referenced this. So what do you think, right? And it can, because really, if you're going to bother having a relationship with someone, if you're going to bother meeting someone that you really think you'll like, then you might as well be friends with them, and you might as well be friends with them for a long time. And so what is it like when you're first becoming friends with someone that you're friends with for many decades? You like each other, right? And so what do you do with people that you like? You share things, you correspond to some degree, you help them when you can, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, exactly. I love this. It's like, yeah, it's about the relationship more than anything that we want out of the relationship. It's about the relationship. It's about actually enjoying the relationship. Is about enjoying the exchange, the presence of the other person. And as we mentioned a few minutes ago, it's about giving, like networking. And it's building relationships is actually about giving. Then, of course, that will also, in most cases, that will trigger reciprocity. So, of course, you will get something back as well. But it's not the point. It's just that you like people, you like spending time with them, you like helping them. Would you agree?
Yeah, and the reciprocity may not come from that person, right? The reciprocity will come from the universe. And so if you're feeding in giving, it's not necessarily going to be reflected back from that individual. But what you're doing is you're sort of accelerating this type of energy, this reciprocal energy. And so then it's going to, however you most need it, it's going to come to you, but you can't necessarily choose the direction it's going to come from.
Absolutely, definitely. How many times do we give to somebody and in our network, and then we get from somebody else? Absolutely. They also call it networking karma. Like you give and then you will get. It doesn't matter from who you will get, from whom you will get, but you will get from somebody. Yes, totally. And then I think it gets to a point, like I love this idea of karma and so on, but then I would go a step even further. And I would say, even if I don't get anything back, but we know that, we get things back. I mean, you and I, we have been super connectors for 10 plus years, 15 years. I don't know. So we know that things come back, but I like humanity so much that it becomes kind of spiritual. Even if nothing comes back, I'm still happy that I helped somebody because I like them, because I really want to help people. What do you think? Did you get to that degree as well?
Well, I'm going to suggest that you and your audience may like to expand. Well, we can't expand the definition of humanity exactly, but we can expand the definition of other people to include all things. So if you start thinking of your food as people in a way, and the trees outside and the air that you're breathing and whatever it is, to have relationships with those people and to express reciprocity with those people, then like I have deep relationships with all the plants in my garden, and I talk to them. And I have relationships with the sun and the moon, and I express my thanks to them. And I make offerings to the land, right? I say thank you, and I give gifts to the land, like little sprinkles of tobacco or whatever it may be. So if I'm asking for something from the land, right? This is the Native Americans, just normal part of their culture, but right, if you're harvesting something, if you're receiving something, even if we're printing a book, right? Books are made of paper from trees. So the tree gave its physical body to make part of this book. And so there's a receiving that I've benefited from for this tree. So, I mean, you can start with just gratitude, with thanks for the trees, for the sun, for helping to grow the trees, for whatever. There's like so many things that went into whatever object, the screens that we're using, right, were like a gift from the earth. And so there's this huge expansion of gratitude and reciprocity that is available once you bring awareness to it.
I love this, and this is actually one of the reasons why I'm vegan.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, I love all of this. And by the way, because we are approaching, unfortunately, the end of our conversation, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask everybody. Like everybody who's been on the show gets this question, which means that you got it already a few months ago when you came here for the first time. The question is, maybe you remember it, maybe you don't, but who doesn't matter. The question is, Derek, what is a question that I haven't asked you? I didn't ask you this question over the past 50 minutes. What is this question that I haven't asked you, but I should have asked you?
Oh, I don't know. You do a great job. Let me see if there's well, there's to follow up with what we've talked about sort of reaching out to people online and like building these relationships remotely. But there's a whole other side of this, which is sort of building rapport strategically in person. And there's a study of people you can do, which is understanding body language and the biology of humans, and really understanding, well, even mammals, right? In sort of bigger picture, how do mammals structure themselves culturally? How do people feel safe to communicate with you? How do they understand that you're trustworthy or that you're influential or whatever it may be? There's, posture, there's eye contact, there's the voice, there's movements. There's so many different aspects that if you bring awareness to them, if you begin to study them, then you can understand how people perceive you, and you can build connection much more quickly in person or even over a phone call. Just an example. So like just the right amount of eye contact is going to make people feel like you're confident. Or if you have a resonance to your voice, there's a signal that your nervous system is relaxed enough that they can relax around you. And so there's many different aspects which can more easily biological organism to biological organism form this connection between people. So that's a whole nother topic that I'm fascinated with, but can accelerate this whole process of getting VIPs to want to spend time with you.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, if you pay attention to all of this, and then if you act accordingly, then of course you can create rapport. And then if there is rapport, then people are going to be more open to you and your ideas and your invitations from the get-go. Yes, I love this. Derek. I think one of the topics that we need to talk about is like the topic of influence. What do you think? Like maybe even just in-person influence.
Yeah. It's really interesting as I get older, right? And I have two little kids now, and having kids and sort of being the director of the household has me showing up in other ways where people just assume that I'm the person with the plan and I'm going to make sure that everything runs smoothly. But there's an embodiment there, right? If people just look at you and they think, oh, you're gonna solve all the problems, there's some clue that's making them feel that way. And it's kind of almost just an identity. You're showing up in a particular identity. So yeah, it's really it's another interesting topic for sure.
Oh my God, I know a lot of people who I can talk about a lot of topics with, but you're definitely, I don't know, in the top 5. I can talk about anything with you, anything, like all of the topics, and even more. There's so many topics that you master that I have no clue about. This is amazing. So, Derek, are we going to have you on the show even before the end of 2023, potentially? Because guys, there's something that we want to bring to your attention, which is going to be cool and it's going to be like a game changer. It really has the potential to be a game changer for you. Right, Derek?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. We won't say anything. Just stay tuned, guys, because if you want to become a thought leader, this is what you need to do. Right?
Brilliant. Yes.
Perfect. All right, Derek, thank you so much for this lovely second interview that you had here with us today on the Personal PR Show. You will be back soon. In the meantime, I will see you. I'm going to see you tonight, by the way, for the Global Super Connectors. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, in a few hours.
Yeah. Hopefully, Bonnie will be there as well. Guys, we'll try to have Bonnie on the show as well. It's going to be amazing. Maybe we can do a little panel with Derek, Bonnie, and myself. Like Bonnie is out of this world, right? With all of her connections and how pivotal she was, and, in so many, innovations that were made over the past 30 years in tech. Crazy stuff.
She's amazing. Yeah. Agreed. Thanks, Jessica.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much, Derek. See you in 2 hours. Bye, guys. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Personal PR Show. Bye, everybody. Ciao.